When you think of 1960s, muscle cars, GTOs, Mustangs, and Chargers probably come to mind. But hiding in the shadows were some absolutely bizarre, wild machines that were faster and stranger than anything you've ever heard of. Today, we're diving into 10 of the weirdest muscle cars from the 1960s that nobody talks about. Number 1, 1962 to 1963, Oldsmobile Jetfire. This is America's first mass-production turbocharged car, and it came out when most people didn't even know what a turbocharger was. Oldsmobile took their aluminum 215 cubic inch V8 and strapped a Garrett turbocharger to it, creating the world's first factory turbo muscle car. It made 215 horsepower, achieving the magical 1 horsepower per cubic inch. But here's where it gets weird. The Jetfire used something called turbo rocket fluid, which was a 50-50 mix of water and methanol that got injected into the intake to prevent detonation. This was World War II aircraft technology being used in a street car. The problem? Owners kept forgetting to refill the fluid reservoir. When it ran dry, the engine would start knocking itself to death. By 1965, Oldsmobile was actually recalling Jetfires and offering to remove the turbo and replace it with a regular 4-barrel carburetor. Only 3,765 Jetfires were built in 1962 and another 5,842 in 1963. Today, it's estimated that maybe 30 to 50 cars still have functioning turbochargers. This was the muscle car that was literally too advanced for its own good. Number 2, 1969, AMC Rambler. AMC took their boring Econobox Rambler Compact and stuffed in the 315 horsepower, 390 cubic inch V8 from the AMX. Then they painted it in the most obnoxious red, white, and blue paint scheme ever seen on a production car. We're talking broad red body sides, wild hood graphics, and a fat blue dorsal stripe. It looked like Captain America threw up on a Rambler. But this patriotic clown car was actually fast, like really fast. It weighed only 3,160 pounds and could hit 60 in 6.3 seconds and run the quarter mile in 14.3. That made it quicker than GTOs and Roadrunners that cost twice as much. AMC priced it at just $2,998, giving it one of the best horsepower per dollar ratios in the entire muscle car era. They planned to build 500 cars, but demand was so strong they ended up building 1,512. The SC Rambler was created specifically for NHRAF stock drag racing, making it probably the only production muscle car ever built and marketed for a single drag racing class. It came with a functional hood scoop that looked like a dog sniffing for a scent, a Hurst shifter, and a stripped-down interior to save weight. This was AMC's middle finger to everyone who said you needed a big company to build a real muscle car. Number 3, 1964, Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. Ford only built about 100 of these, and they were essentially legal drag racing cars that you could technically drive on the street. Ford took their mid-size Fairlane and crammed in the massive 427 cubic inch V8 from the full-size Galaxy, complete with dual 4-barrel Holley carburetors. The official rating was 425 horsepower, but the real number was probably closer to 500 or 600 horses. To make room for this engine and save weight, Ford did some insane things. They used fiberglass for the front fenders, hood, and inner fenders. They deleted the heater and radio. They moved the battery to the trunk for better weight distribution. The front suspension was basically race spec. These things could run 11-second quarter miles right off the showroom floor, which was absolutely bonkers for 1964. About half were built with 4-speed manuals and half with automatics. They cost around $3,900, which was expensive, but you were basically buying a super stock drag car with license plates. Today, clean Thunderbolts sell for $250,000 to $500,000, making them some of the most valuable Ford muscle cars ever built. Number 4, 1969, Copo Camaro ZL1. This car technically wasn't supposed to exist. COPO stood for Central Office Production Order, which was a loophole that let dealerships special order cars with options that weren't normally available. GM had a corporate policy that mid-size and smaller cars couldn't have engines bigger than 400 cubic inches, but clever dealers figured out they could use COPO to order Camaros with the 427 cubic inch big block from the Corvette. The ZL1 was the ultimate COPO Camaro. It had an all-aluminum 427 built specifically for drag racing. This thing made around 430 horsepower officially, but the real number was probably north of 500. The all-aluminum engine weighed about the same as a small block, which meant the ZL1 handled better than it had any right to. Here's the catch. That aluminum 427 was expensive to build. The ZL1 option added $4,160 to the price of the car, nearly doubling it. At a time when you could buy a Corvette for less money, most people weren't interested. Only 69 ZL1 Camaros were ever built, making them rarer than most Ferraris. Today, they're worth over $1 million if you can even find one. This was the muscle car that was too fast, too expensive, and too rare for its own good. Number 5. 1963 Pontiac Tempest Super Duty. Before the GTO, Pontiac built something even wilder. Only 14 of these were ever built, with 2 being prototypes. Pontiac took their Tempest Compact and stuffed in the massive 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8 that made 405 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds of torque. This was the fastest Pontiac muscle car of the entire 1960s, and strangely, Pontiac built it in both wagon and coupe models, 6 of each. The Tempest Super Duty had a complicated transmission that was part manual and part automatic, which sounds weird because it was. This thing could complete the quarter mile in 12.04 seconds at 116 miles per hour, which was absolutely insane for 1963. The Tempest Super Duty dominated the Daytona American Challenge Cup in 1963, but then GM canceled its factory racing program and the car was quickly forgotten. It was overshadowed by the GTO that came the next year, which is ironic because the Tempest Super Duty was actually faster and rarer. These things are basically unicorns today. If you ever see one, you're looking at one of the rarest muscle cars ever built. Number 6. 1969 Dodge Charger 500. Everyone knows about the Dodge Daytona with its massive wing and nose cone. But before that, Dodge built the Charger 500, their first attempt at creating an aerodynamic NASCAR homologation special. The Charger 500 got a flush-mounted grille, a recessed rear window, and a chin spoiler to improve aerodynamics. Most came with the 440 cubic inch Magnum engine, but only 27 were built with the legendary 426 Hemi. Here's what makes it weird. The Charger 500 was basically a failure. It couldn't beat Ford's Talladega on the NASCAR tracks, and it didn't sell well in showrooms either. Dodge built around 500 of them total to meet NASCAR homologation requirements, and then they went back to the drawing board and created the Wild Daytona. The Charger 500 is the forgotten middle child of Mopar's Aero Wars, but those 27 Hemi cars are insanely rare and valuable today. This was the car that had to fail so the Daytona could succeed. Number 7. 1967 Shelby GT 500 Super Snake Carroll. Shelby built this monster as a tire test mule for Goodyear. He took a GT 500 Mustang and shoehorned in the same 427 cubic inch V8 that powered the Ford GT 40 Le Mans race car. This engine made somewhere around 600 horsepower, which was an absolutely insane number for 1967. The Super Snake had upgraded suspension, upgraded brakes, and could reportedly hit 170 miles per hour. Shelby intended to build 50 of them and sell them to the public, but the car was just too expensive and too extreme. Only one was ever completed. That single car sold new for about $5,000 in 1967. In 2019, it sold at auction for $2.2 million. In 2017, Shelby American built 10 continuation Super Snakes with 550 horsepower 427 engines, and those sold retailed for about $250,000 each. The original Super Snake is the rarest, weirdest, and most valuable Mustang ever built. One car, just one. That's it. Number 8. 1969 Mercury Cyclone CJ428 Drag Pack. Mercury was Ford's upscale brand, and the Cyclone was their version of the Fairlane muscle car. The CJ428 Cyclone made 335 horsepower officially, but everyone knew it was making closer to 400. But if you checked the drag pack option, you got the Super Cobra jet with an external oil cooler, Le Mans-style connecting rods, and other heavy-duty racing components. Only 358 Cyclones were built with the drag pack option, making them rarer than most Shelby cars. These things could run low 13-second quarter miles bone stock, and they had a lightweight fiberglass hood to save weight. The problem was that Mercury dealers didn't know how to market performance cars. The Cyclone was overshadowed by the Mustang, the Torino, and basically every other Ford performance car. Today, most people have no idea these even existed, which is a shame because they were genuinely great muscle cars that could run with the best of them. Number 9. 1969 Ford Torino Talladega. This car was built purely to cheat at NASCAR. Ford needed something to compete with Chrysler's aerodynamic monsters, so they created the Torino Talladega. They stretched the nose, smoothed the front end, and dropped the ride height to make it more aerodynamic. The car had upgraded cooling systems, heavy-duty shocks, and a beefier automatic transmission. Under the hood was the 428 Cobra jet, making 335 horsepower. Ford had to build at least 500 to meet NASCAR homologation requirements, so they built 754. But 4 of them are missing from the official registry and have never been accounted for. These things could hit 190 miles per hour on NASCAR's superspeedways, which was absolutely insane for 1969. The Talladega is the forgotten NASCAR legend that proved Ford could beat Chrysler at their own aero game. Today, they're incredibly valuable and sought after by collectors who know what they're looking at. Number 10. 1964 Studebaker Avanti R3. Studebaker was a dying company in the early 60s, but they weren't going down without a fight. The Avanti was their last gasp of creativity, a fiberglass-bodied Grand Tourer that looked like nothing else on the road. The R3 was the supercharged version, using a 304 cubic inch V8 with a Paxton supercharger that made 335 horsepower. Here's what makes it weird. Only 9 R3 Avantis were ever built. 9. This makes it rarer than almost any muscle car on this list. The R3 could run 15-second quarter miles, which doesn't sound impressive now, but was competitive in 1964. The problem was that Studebaker was bankrupt and couldn't build more. The company shut down its American operations in 1963, making the R3 one of the last true American Studebakers ever built. Today, these things are worth over $200,000 if you can even find one. This was the muscle car built by a dead company that refused to give up. So there you have it. 10 of the weirdest, strangest, and most obscure muscle cars from the 1960s that almost nobody knows about. These weren't the cars that got magazine covers or movie roles. They were the strange experiments, the desperate gambles, and the brilliant ideas that came from engineers willing to break every rule in the book. From turbocharged Oldsmobiles to patriotic Ramblers, from one-off Shelby Mustangs to NASCAR specials, these cars represent the absolute peak of American automotive insanity. They were built in an era when anything seemed possible, when horsepower was cheap, and when nobody cared about fuel economy or emissions. Today, these cars are worth fortunes. Some are worth more than houses. But back in the day, they were just weird experiments that most people ignored, and that's what makes them so special. They're proof that the best ideas often come from the margins, from the companies and engineers who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. If you ever get the chance to see one of these cars in person, stop and take a good look. You're looking at a piece of history that almost nobody remembers. You're looking at the cars that time forgot, the ones that never got their due, and the machines that prove American automotive creativity was at its absolute peak in the 1960s. That wraps up our look at 10 weird muscle cars of the 1960s that nobody knows about. Thank you all for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive obscurity, hit that like button and share this with other enthusiasts. There are so many more weird and forgotten muscle cars out there, and if you want to see more, let me know in the comments. But I'll see you all in the next one, enthusiasts.